Thursday, February 22nd. I'm your host, Sarah Beal. On today's show, we'll talk to Town Manager Mark Ells, Cape and Island State Senator Julian Cyr, and Britt Biedenbender, the Town Councilor from Precinct 4. But first, let's get a look at today's top headlines. The Art on Loan program displays the works of local artists on meeting room walls in Barnstable Town Hall. Currently on display are works by Barnstable High School students in the hearing room and the Selectmen's Conference Room. A view of Sandy Neck through the eyes of Barnstable High School art students on display in the hearing room, and graphic design student work in the Selectmen's Conference Room, now through March 16th. The Appointments Committee, made up of 5 town councilors, will interview applicants and make recommendations to the Town Council, who vote to appoint members at their regular meetings. Coming up next, Town Manager Mark Ells. Senator Cyr, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Sarah.
Thanks. We have a couple of things we want to talk about. The first thing we want to talk about is the Senate Capital Bond Bill. This made news recently. What can you tell us about this?
So I was really proud to secure $53 million in funding for Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard that would go to important regional infrastructure projects in this capital bond bill. This includes some big things in the town of Barnstable. It includes $1.6 million in funds to improve and actually do remediation at the National Guard Armory in Hyannis, actually right across the street from your studio space. Also, $6.5 million to construct a new building for Barnstable County Regional Government on a site at Route 134, also in Barnstable and Hyannis. Was able to secure funds as well for upgrades to the Dukes County Jail, which is pretty out of date. Another $2 million to extend the Cape Cod Rail Trail on the Outer Cape. And of course, probably the largest amount is for $41 million for a new science building at Cape Cod Community College. This is something I've been working in partnership with my colleague Dave Vieira, who represents Falmouth and Mashpee, and really something state-of-the-art investment that they need. So these are these are good investments, and we're hoping that we can get them adopted in the final bill and then convince the Baker-Polito administration to fund them.
Wonderful. How exactly does this sort of funding work?
So this works. So the capital bond bill essentially gives authorization to spend the money, and then it's up to the governor and his administration to release those dollars. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how it works. It can come quickly. It can take a while, and sometimes not everything is realized. So the $41 million for the Cape Cod Community College science building, that was actually something we had done last time around, and that didn't ultimately get funded. I think with some of these smaller projects, for the Armory, environmental improvements at the Armory, for the new the regional government building for the Cape Cod, for the Barnstable County, those are things I'm hopeful because they're smaller projects in the grand scheme of dollars that we can shake loose more quickly.
Mm-hmm. What would be the next steps in order to receive this funding? I know you said it has to go to the governor.
Yep. So it goes to the governor. First, he needs to sign the bill, and then that's when the advocating, lobbying, persuading piece starts. And so these really all came up with conversations that I had with Town Manager Mark Ells, with members of the Town Council, mm-hmm. about also members of County Commissioner Leo Kukunis, about what sort of priorities and what sort of infrastructure needs we have across the region. And I think that what it is really helpful in doing is definitely getting on the state's radar that these are sites and facilities that merit state investment.
Definitely. I know the Armory is a great location. It's a great spot. It's a great asset that the town has. But like you said, there is some remediation that needs to be done.
Yeah, significant remediation.
In order for the building to be used. So hopefully that the governor will see that and agree and improve this and send it forward.
That's what we're hoping for.
Hopefully. The other thing we want to talk about is the County Human Services Department recently did a study on opioid death data for about 10 years.
This is a really, really kind of fascinating look at the existing data that we have. And, as someone who's a public health guy, I worked for the Department of Public Health, as you may know, for 6 years mm-hmm. prior to assuming this role. And so the county took a look from 2004 to 2014. And of the several hundred deaths, I believe it's 281 deaths that we've had in Barnstable County related to the opioid epidemic in that period, trying to say, all right, what can we learn about these individuals who died because of this disease and this epidemic, and how can that inform our interventions and our prevention more in the region, right? What are we going to learn? And this is something we often do in epidemiology, that it tells us things that we may know, but confirms it, or sometimes will tell us things that are surprising. So of those several hundred deaths, I believe it's 281 is the sample size we're talking about. Over 68% of those individuals had a high school education or less. So they're what we call straight to work, meaning they're not going to college, they're not going to community college, they're not getting a further education. So they're folks who are going straight into the workforce after high school. And then of those same individuals, more than half of those folks are in services, including services and trades, and 1 in 4, 25%, are employed in construction. And so what this data, I think, is really helpful in pointing out where we need to really be targeting both interventions and then especially prevention work. And so that in our schools, with our students who are going straight into the workforce, maybe they don't stay in high school, they get their GED, they go straight into the workforce. That's a real target population for prevention and intervention as it relates to this epidemic. And similarly, in the construction trades and that field as well, really important for us to be thinking about how we provide treatment, how we do prevention and intervention. The Senate and the House will be taking up legislation on the opioid epidemic and opioid 2.0 bill. The governor's filed a bill. That's the start of the conversation. So we're going to be looking at that. I'm hoping that I can see how do we really focus on that straight to work population through these legislative efforts. So I think really important information, that tells us about how the epidemic, at least in this 10-year period, how the epidemic has behaved, how it's been playing out on Cape Cod, and I think gives us some tools and ideas of where to really focus scarce resources.
Definitely. It's like you said, it's important information to have so you know what you're going to do moving forward.
Exactly.
And I know that everybody in the state, in the House and in the Senate has, really taken this issue on and trying to find ways to, I don't know if this is something that's fixable 100%, but definitely to help.
Precisely. And I think that it also really kind of requires some out-of-the-box thinking, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you have that data and a data-driven approach, it really, I think, informs, where you need to focus, and how do you think, outside of the box from a public health intervention perspective around how you're going to reach these certain populations. These are harder populations to reach. Right. And so for me, it's something I've been wanting to talk about because I think it's so, I think it's really illuminating in for how we need to be continuing to address this epidemic in our communities.
Wonderful. Julian, is there anything else you'd like to chat about before I let you go today?
Just, I hope you have a lovely and well-deserved vacation.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us
today.
You're so
welcome.
I
Take
appreciate
care.
It. Bye. My guest today is State Senator Julian Cyr. Coming up, Precinct 4 Town Councilor Britt Biedenbender, but first, Cape and Islands State Senator Julian Cyr. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about the CIP process, which is the Capital Improvement Plan, correct?
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
And it's a big process to kind of, and like you said before we talked, it's kind of a rolling process, and it's, the bigger projects across the town that the town does. Yes,
well, it's capital projects, and really it falls under the area of the assets that we manage for the community. It's one of the primary responsibilities of certainly the town manager and our supporting staff to come forward to our town council annually with a request, and we do it in two major areas, one in the area of capital and the other in the area of operations. We have deadlines that we have to meet under the budget schedule and under the charter from the time we submit till the time it comes to hearings before town council. There's certain time frames we have to meet. And so right now we're focused on the capital improvement plan. And that is a plan, like you said, it's a 5-year plan looking at all of those assets we have and what we need to do relevant to them. Actually, what we do is much longer than 5 years, because we've got assets that have 20-year master plans.
Right.
And in the case of what we're doing under the comprehensive water management planning, in some cases we're looking out 50 years as to what we might be doing. Now you can imagine beyond 5 it becomes less and less a specific working plan and much more a strategic, a directional, a strategic sort of longer term plan. Actually, anything over 1 year could be a strategic plan,
Right.
but but we're also saying to our community and to our leadership and within our staff, look, these are the things we either know are coming or we think are coming, and this particular plan is capital. So what does that mean? It means all the buildings, the land, the facilities, the assets of the community, and every asset has a useful life. So it only lasts so long.
Right.
And we have to make decisions in the way that we manage over the life of the asset. And the really 2 major points that we have to think about are we running them to the end of the useful life, or are we running to failure? And those can be very different. And those can be very different depending on how you maintain them.
Right.
If you don't spend the money you need to maintain them properly, you typically shorten the life. And therefore, that has impacts. And that's not a very cost-effective, efficient way to manage assets.
Right.
We began putting in place master plans and making sure that appropriate operation and maintenance money were associated with the assets. Actually, I've been doing it all the time I've been here. So that's why, when you see Barnstable saying that it has a good, sound financial basis, it is looking at its assets in a responsible manner. When outside agencies look at us from a financial perspective, when granting agencies for water and wastewater look at us, they see this immediately. And they say, oh wow, okay, they have, town of Barnstable is managing effectively and efficiently, and not only are they investing in their infrastructure, but they're maintaining their infrastructure properly. And it helps us toward all those, it helps us in maintaining financial stability, because it would be, and it happens from time to time when regulations change, when weather events occur, but every once in a while we might be surprised that we're at that decision point relevant to an asset, but for the most part, we pretty much know what we need to do, and the bigger challenge is, okay, how are we going to afford to do it? And so that's what capital planning is. And so every year we bring in the capital plan, and they run from anywhere from $10 to $50 million, depending on what we're doing.
Right.
And we probably have about $250 million worth of identified capital plans that we have to implement, capital projects that we need to do. Now, we can't do that even over 5 years. That's probably a decade worth of projects, but that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. And then some of the longer term, like sewer and water related, some of the reoccurring that we know will never stop, like road maintenance, and now we're looking at dredging. Certainly, those are, there's an operating side, but then there's a capital side as well. So we know that we're going to have to be spending dollars on our roadway system. A road only lasts so long,
Right.
like I've described, and it goes kind of through that same process. Every asset is the same. So that's what we're doing in the capital plan. Now, every year, we look at what that next year's program is and what the specific projects are, and where we are in the useful life versus operate to fail, and we make decisions because we just don't have an unlimited amount of resources.
Right.
So if we just see that that roof is safe and it's not leaking, it can go another year, we may say, okay, let's move that out 1 more year, even though it's at 20, 25, 30 year mark.
Right.
Let's move it another year, and that allows us now to look to do something else that perhaps can't move.
Right.
You're also always looking at discretionary and non-discretionary, because there are some areas that you have, like you don't want to run your treatment plant or your water system to failure.
Right.
That's not a good way to go.
That's not a good way to go at all.
It's not a responsible way to go. It's heavily regulated. There's certainly public health and safety issues, so you don't run that way. You want to anticipate, and now if there's for some reason like a roof at one of those facilities, that's a little bit different, but the systems relevant, you want to make sure that those are maintained in a way that as best and as as reasonably as possible, you're making those capital investments. So so we have that going through every asset that our community has, and we have a lot. I mean, we have one of the biggest roadway systems in the state of Massachusetts, and with that comes bridges and drainage and sidewalks and guardrails and signals, as well as the physical asphalt. And so we've got that going on. We've got all of the different resources on the north and the south sides, on our ponds and lakes and bays and open ocean. I mean, most communities don't have to worry about beaches. No. We have two golf courses. We have cemeteries. We have a lot of assets out there, and that's just a municipal airport, though that's kind of dealt with separately because there's federal and state funding that can assist with those capital projects. Right. But again, we have to have a master plan. We have to know what we need to do over a long 20, 30 year period of time, and then each year we come in with those projects that need to be implemented to keep it safe and functional, and regulate from a regulatory standpoint are required, et cetera. And there's a whole set of criteria that we utilize when we evaluate all the different projects. Schools, we have schools throughout our community as well, and they're part of this process, and they go through the same sort of planning process with us that we do. And so that's a good thing. There's no surprises coming from the school. We know what they're trying to achieve, and we try to be supportive, and we try to plan within the financial parameters that we have going into capital planning.
I was going to say, this sounds like a lot of planning, a lot of looking ahead, a lot of looking at things on a year-to-year basis. So it's very complicated, but it's very important in order to keep the town of Barnstable running in a smooth way.
Well, it is, because I don't think to our community or our leadership or us, our management here, that it's acceptable not to provide a high quality product from the town of Barnstable. And I say this quite often, but Barnstable and Hyannis are positioned differently than other communities. I mean, when you come to Cape Cod, Barnstable and Hyannis are on your list of places to go.
Right.
When you spend whether you live here and you've chosen to be here, or whether you do business here and you've chosen to be here, or whether you take your one vacation of the year from somewhere else in the world and you choose to come here, there's a high expectation, and we need to be able to deliver that community, that product to whomever, whether it's our resident, our business, or our visitor. And be very disappointed if you came and it wasn't what you had hoped it would be.
Right. And
so that gets built into the capital program. And we're not accepting of, well, we just can't do it, and that's good enough. That
doesn't work.
No, it does not. If you want to hold your position of a destination, national destination, it doesn't. So that adds to, again, I say often that Barnstable is a complex community, and certainly capital planning I've gone through very quickly, but that's another aspect of it that is always right there with us, that we need to see our community as it is seen by those who live, do business, and visit it, and we need to make sure we deliver product that addresses that and satisfies that and keeps that quality of life in, quite honestly, in the marketplace. Or else people will opt to do something else.
Yeah, they won't come here anymore.
Yeah, well, we don't want that to occur.
No, we don't want that at all.
We like to see them. Even the traffic.
Even the traffic, we'll take it. That means that things are good.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for coming in and telling us all about the capital improvement plan.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.
Okay.
My guest today is Mark Ells. He's our town manager here in the town of Barnstable. Britt, thank you so much for joining us today. You are one of the new town councilors that just came on back in December. So let's start with what made you decide to run for town council?
Well, so we had a big election in January, in November, and we took on a new presidency in January. And not to be political, but I was very discouraged by the national conversation that was going on. It doesn't matter what side you were on, and I believe both sides are very frustrated by what was happening. And I found myself feeling that I wanted to be in a situation where I could do more, and I felt that where you can make the most difference is, you know, in a town. You cannot affect change on the national level. Even on the state level, it's challenging, right? But in your own hometown, you can do a lot. And my feeling was that it starts in your backyard. So that, combined with the fact that I have a daughter who's going to be a graduating senior this year, and looking ahead to the next several years and what my life is going to be like now that's going to change dramatically, I decided that I would do what I could to get involved locally. So I first started out by joining the Barnstable Economic Development Commission, and that was the beginning. And then there was a town council seat. My precinct, Fred Chirigotis, who was our town councilor, he was term limited, and that seat was open. And the encouragement of a couple people that I knew, I decided to run.
Wonderful. What do you think of it so far?
It's like sipping water from a fire hose. It's overwhelming, but I also love it. It's
Yeah.
great. I really, really do love it.
Let's talk a little bit about the precinct. Precinct 4 is mainly in Centerville. What are some of the concerns in Precinct 4?
So one thing I will say is just let's define the parameters of Precinct 4, because a lot of people don't know their precinct, right? So Precinct 4 is basically Centerville south of 28 between Bumps River Road and Strawberry Hill Road. So it's this compact little rectangle. Has a quite a mix, actually, of you know, you have the folks who live on the ocean. They have those summer homes, you know, those, you know, you have that high end, and then you also have a lot of folks who are sort of mid-income, some that really struggling, which is something that I was able to experience firsthand as I was knocking on doors during the campaign. You know, folks that are, you know, you've got whole families living with the parents because they can't find a place to live on Cape Cod. So there's a real range of folks that live in that tiny little precinct. It also is an incredibly environmentally sensitive area. You know, you have the Bumps River, you have the Centerville River, you have the Long Beach Barrier Beach. You know, you have that entire ocean front. Lots of wetlands. So there are a lot of different components to it. Plus, you know, it does include, you know, part of 28. So you do have that sort of commercial district as well. So there's a lot of variety within the precinct and a lot of differing concerns.
What are some of your concerns of the town as a whole? What do you see as being the important things as a town councilor that you need to look at for the whole town? Because you know, you are the town councilor for Precinct 4,
right?
But you know, you
Right.
also are serving the whole town.
I agree, and I say that to people a lot because, you know, in reality, to get elected takes very few votes. In reality, I was elected by 354 people. There are 45,000 people in this town, right? So yes, while I'm elected within my precinct, in reality, I do represent those 45,000 people. So, you know, it's paying attention to the small things, but also looking comprehensively and sort of more in a visionary way. I would say probably one of my primary focus would be on all things related to the environment, right? So it's very much a comprehensive, holistic approach. So looking at the environment means wastewater, it means clean water, it means protecting open space, it means you know, conservation management plans for environmentally sensitive areas. It also means increasing the walkability and the bikeability of our town, right? So decreasing our carbon footprint, but also encouraging people to get outdoors. It includes, you know, wildlife management. It's all of those pieces. So it's a very sort of and renewable energies, right? We're looking at projects like Vineyard Wind. We need to look at what's happening with our single stream recycling. That is, the prices, the costs of that are skyrocketing, and we have to now look at other alternatives. And so there's a lot of work to do on the environmental front when you look at it from a holistic perspective.
Wonderful. You also are a committee liaison to two boards, the Community Preservation Committee as well as the Renewable Energy Committee. Let's talk a little bit about the work that they do and how you hope to support those committees.
Right. So Community Preservation Committee it sort of deals with a number of areas, everything from helping to secure funds for affordable housing, recreation, and open space. So it touches on a number of issues that I'm very, very interested in. Affordable housing is also a major issue for the entire region. And in reality, all of these issues that we're talking about, whether it's the environment, whether it's housing, whether it's economic development, wastewater, these are all regional solutions that we're going to be moving towards. There's no way to look at this from a village perspective or even a town perspective. So one of the things CPC does work on is affordable housing. And helping to provide funds for those kinds of projects. And so that to me is a very important aspect of what that group does.
And the renewable energy, sounds like you're the perfect person to be the liaison to that committee as someone who's so focused on the environment.
Yeah, and so that group has been struggling a little bit because we did have a renewable energy coordinator and we don't now, but that is something I would very much like to see come back because that's a position that legitimately pays for itself, right? And it opens us up to other funding mechanisms, funding sources for any renewable energy initiatives that we pursue. So I would very much like us to start there. But then that will touch on all of those other issues that I mentioned previously.
And you're also on the homelessness subcommittee, just part of the town council, which has been doing a lot of work to try to find ways to help the homeless and find ways to to lessen the impact of the homeless on this community. What would you say about that committee?
Well, so what I want to say is I want to give a huge shout out to the Community Impact Unit of the Barnstable PD, and particularly to Jean Chalice and her team for doing all that they have done. The Barnstable PD, that particular team, has taken on a tremendous responsibility and load of work that really isn't theirs, right? They have stepped up because there's no one else to do that. And so we need to find a way to sort of alleviate that tremendous burden that they have willingly taken on. But this is something that needs to be dealt with not on a town level, but a regional level, and quite frankly, it needs to go up to the state level. So, working with our state reps and senators, our Senator Sear, on how we can work on a regional solution to this, and that will necessitate support at the state level.
Wonderful. You have a lot of hard work ahead of you, but I thank you so much for coming in and joining us and talking about, why you wanted to join the town council and the work that you hope to do.
Well, I appreciate coming in and your invitation, so thank you so much.
Thank you. My guest today is Britt Biedenbender. She's the town councilor for Precinct 4. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Barnstable Today. On Friday's show, we'll meet the people behind the New Classics Company and Natural Resource Officer Amy Croteau. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Beal.